Okay, everybody, welcome back. As you can see, we flipped seats here. Mike is left and Sam has joined us again, and he's going to continue answering questions. You met Sam a little bit earlier in the introduction, so no more need for that. And let's get straight to the questions. And the first question, Sam, comes from Dean Logan. It's a bit of a long one, so it'll take a while to read. He says, long question, yes. Do you know of anyone in the group that has experience in keeping testosterone levels in the 1200 nanogram range for any length of time? I am 54, 220 pounds, around 10% fat. My levels, I assume he means his testosterone levels, came back at 510 and 540. I have worked out, played rugby, and been active my whole life. I lift 3 times per week and train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Here is the problem. I have a very demanding business. I own a moving business, lots of hands-on physical work for hours a day over the summer season. My body is beat to shit and I can't recover. Some days it's like doing an effing CrossFit for 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm willing to gamble a trade-off. I'm 55, so it's not like I have all the time in the world anyway. I think he's saying a trade-off between, I don't know, maybe having more testosterone. Let's finish. He says, my soy boy doctor won't refer me for TRT, so I have to do the research myself. All my blood panels are fine. So I think he's asking, do you know of anyone with experience in keeping testosterone levels in the 1200 range, and would it help with things like doing lots of physical activity?
I mean, it's a tough one. It's a real personal journey if you're going through TRT. So, first of all, you've got to be symptomatic. It's not about numbers. You know, no one's aiming for a certain number above a certain level or anything like that. I mean, if you're going to see one of the doctors, you've got to arrive and say, okay, well, I am symptomatic of, it could be low energy, we know the symptoms, low libido, could be mental health issues, things like that. So and obviously the blood tests are a key part, supporting a bit of information, but you need to go to the doctor with that. Now, 1200, I think, is we hear that a lot from the US, and that's the nanograms per deciliter, I think it is.
Is that like the ideal that you want to reach? Is that the upper end of the range?
I think for a while, yeah. I mean, we have our reference range we normally see, now it's something like 7 to 30, right? Yeah. I believe 30 is something like 900, and theirs, and like 44 is around 1200, something like that. So there was due to the old reference ranges in America and how it used to be, the older sort of thought was that that's your optimum. Everyone's got to aim to get there, but we also know it's actually more about your free testosterone, consistency of the testosterone going into the body. Estrogen, you need enough estrogen and things like that for energy and mood and libido. So really just saying, is there any experience of someone aiming to get there? That's not really ever the aim. You're looking at a person, the doctors will look at every situation, every person that comes in front of them as a patient, and take everything into account. If they need a level that is above 1200 or the 1200 to get a free testosterone to a good level to feel symptomatic relief, then one person may get there, but then another person might need 700, 800, as a total testosterone to try and get a certain level.
Because from the sounds of it, I mean, he's doing jiu-jitsu, he's training, he's working hard. That doesn't sound like someone who has low testosterone. That sounds like someone who has adequate testosterone. I mean, people with low testosterone struggle to do those things, that much activity. So
I mean, so obviously he's a busy guy, and again, maybe there are other things going on. I mean, we speak to some guys, and they go, I'm struggling to get through the day. And it's the energy they're talking about. But then
and he's 54.
He's 50, mate. It sounds good. Like he's doing well. I couldn't do that now. But they may have other things that they're unaware of. Like poor sleep and increased anxiety, and maybe they're still dealing with it. So it's not that he may not have a case, or it's still worth seeing a doctor that I suppose knows what they're talking about for a full assessment. But in terms of targeting a range like that, that's not really something that happens. It's a case by case basis. But if he's suffering, how mentally strong are people? He could be doing all of these things. Maybe he did them for a long period of time. He's always done them, and now it's very, very hard. And he's still doing it. So maybe there is, he's adapted. He's got good genes. So I don't write off the potential need for it. He said his blood levels are good, though. I'm sure he means
He said, you mean talk about the testosterone?
Yeah.
He said about 510 and 540, which is the sort of mid-range, I think.
Yeah, sort of middle of the range, isn't it? But, I mean, I spoke to a guy that saw one of the doctors the other day who was mid-20s and his levels were naturally, total was above 42. And I've seen like a 62-year-old come through who actually just wanted to get some blood tests and get a baseline. He felt fine and his levels were 33 total. Yeah. So, this chap could have had double that. You don't know, but that's where you have to speak to the doctor, make a case, and actually work with them and see if there's something that could be going on.
So let's say someone like this comes in and you're not sure if he's low or not, but he's, you hear a lot of these guys in the community talk about Trt Optimization.
Yeah.
How do you guys normally handle a situation like that? Is it something that you're open to, or?
Well, this is the thing. It's optimizing based on symptoms.
Exactly. Yeah.
So no one's going, if you're sitting at 700 and your free testosterone is good enough, for example, not that it's really common for that to be the case, but if you were then, you're like, sex drive's good and recovery's great and no other side effects and things like that. Why would you not? You don't want to try and fix something that's not broken.
Just because of some number you think is magical number.
You're not going to go, I'm going to go to 1200. Personally, even in my case, if I go too high, I feel more anxious. I feel more tired. So actually, it's not higher is better. People forget that as well. Coming from a low level to a good level might be a good experience.
Exactly.
But going past that, you find your sort of limits. So optimization for you is got to be symptoms, working with the doctor, going through the process. So I think that's where it's key about optimization. If you need to be slightly higher to feel better, then I'm sure the doctor's going to go through that process and potentially find what works to you.
Yeah, because I know personally, if I'm feeling good and chasing some magical number, I'd be worried that if I increase the testosterone more than what I'm on now, that other side effects would start taking place. I'd be a bit paranoid about that, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, some guys when they go too high, their sleep gets affected. They feel like they've got a bit too much energy. They can feel a bit wired, things like that. So, like I say, if you're balanced and you're feeling good, why would you want to mess around with it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Optimization is, I suppose, a symptomatic relief for you and trying to optimally deal with those symptoms. Yeah, I would say.
So just briefly, what do you think this guy should do?
Hey, look, he may be more symptomatic than just the fatigue and, like he's mentioning, it is subjective fatigue, I suppose, you could put it onto an objective measure, but he might have been doing all of these things all of his life. So I think he should probably, speak to the doctor. If he's in the UK, obviously, you can speak to one of us and come through the doctor or approach a doctor if he knows, is willing to be open. But there's other things, there's thyroid. We quite often know that, the NHS, if he's gone to a GP, their impression of when a thyroid is okay is not really in tune with the rest of the evidence in the rest of the world. Yeah. And we know that if, I've seen men that have been hypothyroid be treated with thyroid hormone and it's sorted everything out, the testosterone's improved. Yeah. So I think he probably needs to go and get some good bloods, speak to a doctor, get some advice from somewhere that probably is in the know, if that makes sense. Because he's obviously in the reference range there, but we know that's not really the...
Do you think the likelihood of him getting what he wants on the NHS is probably low and that it's better to probably go privately maybe?
I would say it's probably a good bit of advice maybe to research privately. I mean, I've seen men in the past, come through when they've literally been at the bottom of the reference range, below like there are studies out there. Yeah. I mean, similar for me, I was below the levels where there are studies showing where like the 85 to 100-year-olds were and things like that. And because I was in the reference range, actually, even before a blood test, because I had facial hair, I wasn't getting a blood test. You've got facial hair, you've got good testosterone. And I was like, what about all these symptoms, all of these things? And it was obviously like have an antidepressant, which was the only option for me. Yeah. Have some Viagra if you've got those issues. So maybe private's a good shout. We know the provision isn't great, but you've always got that right to maybe try another NHS GP. You may come across someone that maybe is in tune with the new evidence. The problem is though, even if they're willing, often the NHS is still restricted in cost and the way that they do it. There's a question about libido earlier that is quite attractive for the NHS because of the types of injection every 12 weeks and things and how easy it is for them. And we know that's just not very efficacious. It doesn't work very well, but that might even be what you end up having, even if they think that you are suitable on the NHS. So I'd say he's probably got a higher chance going privately, but always worth a punt,
That's what I tell the guys also. It's like, do what you can with your public health, with maybe your local doctor. And if you're sort of at wit's end and you can't find any solution, then consider going private. No one's putting a gun to your head to go private. Do what you can, and if you can get treatment that's not private, good for you, great. But if you can't, then maybe consider it.
And I think the things that you discuss in your videos and things, that if you're speaking to a doctor and you're asking about free testosterone and estrogen control and injection frequency, if it is injections, things like that, you can usually get a good feel if the doctor's got a hold on what needs to be done. And usually if they don't, you pick that. If you tend to have more of an insight than the doctor, and they're not willing to change things based on the evidence that you show them, then it's probably a bit of a red flag. Try and find someone. But if you find someone that's willing to to learn, and say, okay, well, this isn't something I know about, but you know this, that, and the other, and you've got this evidence in front of me. I'm willing to work with you. And that'd be fantastic. I'm not sure, might be a bit of a unicorn to try and find from my experience, but it's still, you're within that right. There's still a national health service that provides a certain amount of care, and you can definitely try that route, and then you've got a backup of private service.
Exactly. It seems kind of twisted though that in this day and age we've got to teach the doctors basically.
But like it's a tough.
Not all of them, but
no, yeah. But in their defence, that they. They have to learn every, particularly if they train within the NHS.
They call it GP for a reason, a general practitioner.
And you go there after, so you have to learn every disease process, in the NHS. You go to wards where you've got, 20 different patients with 20 different medical histories, 3 or 4 different conditions, and they're really unwell, and you're learning all of those things, and then you branch off to become a GP. Even endocrinologists, a lot of them don't learn about, we hear this, that TRT is not something they usually train in. They would maybe have basic guidelines that they might use, but it's not something they specialise in. They're dealing with the sickness stuff, right? Serious tumours, diabetes, where, the life-threatening stuff is, that the NHS has to provide for. So, that it's not something they learn until they learn it. And then, let's just say you were in, you're like, definitely want to do this, and real good thing that you wanted to start working on was TRT. You've still got the restrictions, haven't you, of what the NHS can provide? So, and
it's almost a combination. Some of them become very arrogant, like, oh no, this is the way it's done, But there are those who realize their hands are effectively tied, by red tape. The bureaucracy of the system. But I mean, we won't go into that again.
No, of course. Yeah, it's I think the most frustrating thing is when you meet someone, and I'm not just talking about doctors, I'm a healthcare professional by trade, and I've worked with various other healthcare professionals. And if a patient comes to you and goes, "Oh, what about this?" and if you haven't heard of it and you pretend like it doesn't exist and you dismiss it, that's the worst sort of patient care. You've got to be open to that. So I think any sort of healthcare practitioner, doesn't matter who, doctor or otherwise, if they're not willing to listen or to be, the thing about being a healthcare practitioner is you're supposed to follow evidence. You're supposed to follow the most recent evidence. And you're supposed to be proved wrong. That must be the most exciting thing, is when you discover something new. Same with scientists, you're always looking for that separate thing. So if you do get a doctor or that, again, it's another red flag for me. And sadly, there are a few of those healthcare professionals out there in general, and not just doctors.
I've encountered my fair share of them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, Logan, or Dean Logan, I hope that answers your question. So thanks for the question. Okay, the next question we have comes from Locutus, and he says, or he asks, are there people who are not used to therapy? In other words, is there a chance to return to your old natural testosterone levels after 3 years, for example, of testosterone replacement therapy?
So what's the first part of the question? He said he's not used to therapy. Yeah,
I'm not sure what he means by that. He said people are not used to therapy. Is there a chance to return to your old natural testosterone levels after 3 years of TRT?
So I think maybe he's not getting on with it. Maybe he's not feeling good.
Oh yeah, maybe he wants to come off again.
Potentially. I mean, I think the first thing is, if somebody's not used to it or whatever he described, if you're not feeling good, then potentially there's something else going on. Or either the dosage schedule, frequency, all those sorts of things may need. So I'm guessing he's worked with the doctor. I mean, that's something you usually got to sort of figure out within the first year. They're getting dialed in, finding what works for you, not too high, not too low.
Do you think maybe it could also be a case of maybe he was an ex-bodybuilder, and he screwed his system up and he went on TRT to try and, deal with it, and maybe now he thinks he can go back to normal? Or
yeah, potentially.
Come off it?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, answering that part of the question where if he's been suppressed for 3 years, there's a good chance. I mean, the studies show that it can take some time, but it's very personal in terms of amount of suppression you sort of experience. Whether he's been suppressed before, like you said. I mean, if you took some suppressive hormones or steroids, whatever, for years prior, you may have completely irreversibly affected your hormone production. So it is very personal in that aspect. So knowing a bit more about the history without knowing that, it would be hard to sort of give you any sort of idea of what the doctors might say, in that situation. But I mean, even if someone wasn't suppressed, still had poor levels, obviously started TRT, and then for 3 years was on therapy. If you stop, obviously you can go through, like a restart program, can't you, using Clomid or HCG or something similar to try and get the signal back first, get the testicles up and running, with the HCG, and try and restore whatever the body may actually produce. But then you've also got the 3 years of natural aging, I suppose. So, even if you manage to get back what the body is fully functionally able to do, you've got 3 years of suppression, and you've also got 3 years of aging. So you can always try it, and you've got to back up. But I would say normally if someone's at that point, which I've not really seen, but because usually there's something else going on that maybe isn't testosterone, for example, that needs dealing with. So maybe he needs to talk to the doctor about looking at thyroid, and we talked about prolactin earlier, I think you did. So prolactin, even nutritional, deficiencies and things like that. Obviously there are lifestyle factors. Big one, I think, is mental health. I mean, the other things that can benefit mental health. I mean, if you're still experiencing anxiety, low mood, again, we don't really know why he's not getting on with it. Things like clinical psychology, CBT, things like that, going down that road. I find that men and women, when they have their hormones optimized, and they feel better in general, but they've still got some things going on there.
It's not hormone related,
And maybe there was a part hormone related, hormone relation there, but actually when the hormones are better, they then attempt these things, and it seems to be so much more successful. Some guys and women that have done that before getting hormones checked and had anxiety or low mood, got their hormones optimized, and then revisiting those same things just blew it away. It was so much easier, the less self-criticism, things like that. So I know I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but those are things I've seen before.
Okay, so let's swing back to the question then, right? So it's possible to have your levels return to natural levels. It's possible. What's the likelihood though? Because you hear stories, at least I hear in the community, about once you're on TRT, you're on TRT for life. Is that because the likelihood of you getting natural again is so low? I mean, it's possible, but it's more unlikely than likely, or what?
It's really hard to say. It's literally on individual basis. You don't know the history of why. You've got age, you've got lifestyle factors, you've got, why do you have, a low testosterone production to start with? So it's almost you need to try and see. If that's your aim, work with the doctor, try and bring it back to normal, as close to normal. But if you were low to start with, you needed TRT. The doctor would have thought that was something you needed to try. And if you've seen no improvement at all, then maybe there's something else there that you need to revisit. But you're only going to get back to where you were before.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
So that was from Locutus. So thank you for the question. Okay, the next question comes from Craig Shales, and he asks, does Balance My Hormones offer HGH, human growth hormone, for cosmetic purposes? Example, fat loss and muscle gain. And could they talk a bit more about this service, please, if they do? Yeah. And they say, by the way, appreciate what you and Mike and Sam are doing for men's health.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you, appreciate that. So cosmetics purposes, the answer would be no.
Okay.
The growth hormone, human growth hormone, you need to be diagnosed with a deficiency, through testing. So there are symptoms that come alongside that, like it can be, you know, sagging skin and mood and energy and things like that. And obviously you'd be assessed by one of the doctors that does specialize in that. And then you may be treated if it's actually, you know, appropriate. But in terms of, I think when we hear about human growth hormone being abused, you know, in super physiological doses in the athletic world, in the bodybuilding world, where you're using it to get as much muscle gain as possible, to lose fat, which is where we actually hear about it more from that side, don't we? That's, I mean, that's where I heard about it first. You know, I didn't hear about, adult growth hormone deficiency in a 60-year-old where, you know, they where it improved their quality of life and actually improved energy and bone density and things like that. I didn't hear of it from there. I heard from people using it to try and get jacked, you know?
Yeah.
So
I've also heard, one of the books I read by, I think it was a Dr. Katz or something, it was a whole book on HGH and how it's almost like the fountain of youth for men.
Yeah. And again, you have to have a deficiency. So these things are about restoring a good, you know, physiological optimal level for you. So going too high obviously has its issues as well. So if you've got good levels of production, you know, you're not going to be a suitable patient.
Yeah, so you don't offer it for cosmetic purposes, but if there's a clinical need,
clinical
you guys
need.
offer it. Okay.
That would be a good summary. Yeah, and obviously it's the after assessment by the doctor and things like that too.
And how, you know, this is just my question related to this. How do you tell the difference between, you know, for example, someone comes in and they have moodiness symptoms or they may complain about lack of energy or strength. How do you tell the difference between low testosterone and low HGH? Is it as simple as a blood test?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So IGF-1, you know, is a blood test that is used to sort of measure growth hormone
I've heard about that.
Production in the body. So in a simple sort of, very layman's term, how I understand it is that growth hormone is produced by the brain. It floats around the body, does what it needs to do, and then the liver produces IGF-1 for an extended period of time after that. So, you can do a stimulation test for growth hormone, but it can be dangerous. So measuring IGF-1 in the blood is something that's measured. And then there are assessment tools and talking to the patient about those things as well. So IGF-1 can be tested, but I have said this to some people in the past, you know, that they might come through and we're looking to get them to the doctor and they're like, well, I'd like to speak to the doctor about growth hormone therapy. That's something I'm really interested in, and testosterone therapy and things like that too. Yeah. But, you know, if you've got suboptimal or low testosterone and estrogen, you know, low estrogen can reduce your IGF-1 levels. So you can actually get an improvement in sort of IGF levels from just having an optimal level of estrogen, you know. So if it was me and, you know, look from a patient point of view, I'd always try and look at, you know, my testosterone levels first, get those optimized, and then with my estrogen as well, and then measure maybe IGF-1, you know, down the line, if that makes sense. Yeah. But some of the symptoms cross over. Testosterone is strongly sort of linked with the sexual side effects, you know, the mood on when people are optimized with growth hormone. It's almost like a subtle thing.
Yeah,
I generally feel a bit better, but you and I, from coming from like low levels of testosterone, I mean, I'm not sure how much, you know, your mood was affected, but, you know, mine was low, right? Yeah. It's generally low all the time, and it's just an immediate sort of change back to how I felt, you know, years ago. From what I've seen in patients, it's not as drastic as that. So
it's almost like you were irritable before that, and now you're just a bit more calmer and things like that. It's very subtle.
Definitely calm, and you know, people have that association, don't they? Oh, maybe it increases aggression and things like that. But
I had more aggression when I had low testosterone. I would be snapping for every little thing.
Yeah, no, there's evidence showing increased anger with, you know, low testosterone.
Low and high, yeah.
Low and high.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So the difference between those two, you know, what you normally see is, you know, more of the sexual side effects with the testosterone. But like I say, you can always discuss those things with the doctor. But if you're looking at therapies, I mean, you know, growth hormone therapy is a more expensive therapy. It's always been a more expensive medication.
Yeah.
So, in my eyes, if you've got low estrogen causing low IGF-1, you know, and affecting sleep, you know, better sleep causes better growth hormone production as well. Low testosterone can cause poor sleep. Yeah. You know, so starting off with those other hormones on a step-by-step basis is probably a sensible thing to do.
Okay, now let's take this guy, Craig Shales. Let's say, for argument's sake, he's just interested in a cosmetic purpose. You know, he doesn't want to go through all of that. You guys obviously don't do the cosmetic side of things. Do those other men's health clinics, you know, the high street ones in London, do they do these types of things, or do you have to go the illegal route, for example, for what he wants to accomplish?
I can't imagine they would.
Yeah,
I mean, they may.
Yeah.
My opinion on whether that should happen obviously may differ.
Yeah.
You're going for a medical need, aren't you? Clinical need,
Exactly.
as you put. So they may. Obviously, I wouldn't condone it. I mean, I'm not giving medical advice. Our doctors wouldn't be happy doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if he was trying to do that, then his only, his option would be that. But black market is not any. I never advise anything like that.
Exactly.
It's an absolute minefield. You don't know what you're getting. So maybe he needs to look into other things. Potentially. You can do all the other things that some people say are maybe sound a bit patronising, but making sure the rest of your life, diet, exercise, and even making sure your hormones your testosterone and things are okay.
I'd like to assume that when people are answering
I'm
the
sure
question,
they are.
that they have taken care of those things first. I always say take care of your lifestyle habits, but everyone's looking for shortcuts. But anyway,
absolutely.
I don't think this is Craig, but I hope that helps you, Craig, in what you're looking for and with your journey. But thanks for the question.